Well, hello again. I thought I'd have a quick look at this recent Senate Armed Services Emerging Threats and Capabilities Subcommittee presentation that was aired recently. I'll leave a link to this video below. This one's from the Washington Examiner. I don't know if you can see that down the bottom there. The Washington Examiner. There we go. So I'll leave a link to this below so you can watch it in its entirety. I've just taken a few clips, or 2 or 3 clips out that I think might be worth a look. And we'll just have a quick listen. I think the first one's only a few minutes and then they get progressively shorter.
AARO is partnering with the services, intelligence community, DOE, as well as civil partners and across the U.S. government to tap into the resources of the interagency. The UAP challenge is more an operational and scientific issue than it is an intelligence issue. As such, we are working with industry, academia, and the scientific community, which bring their own resources, ideas, and expertise to this challenging problem set.
So they've got quite a lot of people involved looking at this stuff now.
Robust collaboration and peer review across a broad range of partners will promote greater objectivity and transparency in the study of UAP. I want to underscore today that only a very small percentage of UAP reports display signatures that could reasonably be described as anomalous. The majority of unidentified objects reported to AARO demonstrate mundane characteristics of balloons, unmanned aerial systems, clutter, natural phenomena, or other readily explainable sources. While a large number of cases in our holdings remain technically unresolved, this is primarily due to a lack of data associated with those cases. Without sufficient data, we are unable to reach defendable conclusions that meet the high scientific standards we set for resolution.
So what he means is that they're not a group of guys that are sitting around like the UFO fanboys do and look at pictures, or they'll look at a bit of video, look at a piece of video, and then determine from that it's an extraterrestrial spacecraft, or it's a balloon, or it's a drone. They actually put some effort into finding out what these things actually are.
I will not close a case that I cannot defend the conclusions of.
So he won't close a case unless he's confident that he can defend the conclusions if he's challenged about it. If they say it's a balloon and everyone else says no, it isn't, he won't put out that determination unless he feels that he can successfully defend that conclusion.
I recognize that this answer is unsatisfying to those who in good faith assume that what they see with their eyes, with their cameras, and with their radars is incontrovertible evidence of extraordinary characteristics and performance.
Yeah, and so that means that they're not going to listen to stories, basically. They want evidence as such. People like Steve Bassett will say, well, we've got to cure people with signed affidavits, but it's meaningless. That's the bottom line. That's the truth of the matter. Doesn't matter how many sworn affidavits you've got. It's not evidence.
Yet time and again, with sufficient scientific quality data, it is fact that UAP often, but not always, resolve into readily explainable sources. Humans are subject to deception and illusions, sensors to unexpected responses and malfunctions, and in some cases, intentional interference.
Yeah, like the Nimitz case, I'm pretty sure that was the secret software upgrade on the sensors. Kevin Day, the radar operator on the Princeton at the time, has even said, and I made a video of him saying this, that includes him saying this in his own words. He said he thinks he knows what it is, but he's not going to tell us what his opinion is because he doesn't want to destroy the credibility of the story. They're his words. In other words, it's a sensor malfunction. And he doesn't want to spoil the UFO story.
Getting to the handful of cases that pass this level of scrutiny is the mission of AARO. That is not to say that UAP, once resolved, are no longer of national security interest, however. On the contrary, learning that a UAP isn't of exotic origin, but is instead just a quadcopter or balloon, leads to the question of who is operating that quadcopter and to what purpose.
Oh, the point I missed there was that people can honestly believe they've seen something unusual. They'll sign an affidavit to that effect, but what they're seeing may not be anomalous. It may just be their interpretation that it's anomalous. That's what he means by that, the first part of that.
The answers to those questions will inform potential national security or law enforcement responses. AARO is a member of the department's support to the administration's Tiger Team effort to deal with stratospheric objects such as the PRC high-altitude balloon. While when previously unknown objects are successfully identified, it is AARO's role to quickly and efficiently hand off such readily explainable objects to the intelligence, law enforcement, or operational safety communities for further analysis and appropriate action. In other words, AARO's mission is to turn UAP into SEP, somebody else's problem.
So he's just explained that they'll have a look at it and they'll say, is this an intelligence issue? Is this an anomalous issue that needs scientific investigation? So if it's like the Chinese balloon, they can just hand it off to the intelligence department. Because it's not of interest to them. They know what it is. They've handed it off. It's not their problem. It's SEP, someone else's problem. The intelligence community can take a look at that and decide what to do about it.
The U.S. government, the DoD and the IC in particular, has tremendous capabilities to deal with those encountered objects. In the wake of the PRC HAB event, the interagency is working to better integrate and share information to address identifiable stratospheric objects, but that is not AARO's lane. Meanwhile, for the few cases in all domains, space, air, and sea, that do demonstrate potentially anomalous characteristics, AARO exists to help the DoD, IC, and interagency resolve those anomalous cases. In doing so, AARO is approaching these cases with the highest level of objectivity and analytic rigor. This includes physically testing and employing modeling and simulation to validate our analyses and underlying theories, then peer reviewing those results within the U.S. government, industry partners, and appropriately cleared academic institutions before reaching any conclusions.
Why not just read a UFO book or two?
I should also state clearly for the record that in our research, AARO has found no credible evidence thus far of extraterrestrial activity, off-world technology, or objects that defy the known laws of physics. In the event sufficient scientific data were ever obtained that a UAP encountered can only be explained by extraterrestrial origin, we are committed to working with our interagency partners at NASA to appropriately inform U.S. government's leadership of its findings. For those few cases that have leaked to the public previously and subsequently commented on by the U.S. government, I encourage those who hold alternative theories or views to submit your research to credible peer-reviewed scientific journals. Eric?
Yeah, okay. So if you disagree with what they've said, anything that they've identified so far, if you disagree with their conclusions, you can suggest you can submit your evidence to peer-reviewed scientific. I can't remember what he said now, but basically, don't send it to him because he's dismissed it. He's already decided. They've already decided what it is. They're not interested in what you've got to say, basically. Okay, let's move on. But no evidence of ET. There's no surprise there. Okay, this is from the same video. I'll leave a link to this below. I noted that Kremlin Jones didn't do that. He'll leave links to his own videos, but he won't leave you a link to the actual source information. And unlike Kremlin Jones, I don't feel the need to put myself in the video. So there's not an image of me in the corner here while I'm talking. That's not really necessary, I don't think. Now, Dr. Kirkpatrick here is just going to give us an example of the analysis of one of their UAP cases.
That historically hasn't been the case, and it's been happenstance that data has been collected. Next slide. This particular event, South Asia MQ9, looking at another MQ9, and what's highlighted there in that red circle is an object that flies through the screen. Unlike the previous one, this one actually shows some really interesting things that everyone thought was truly anomalous to start with. First of all, it's a high-speed object that's flying in the field of regard of two MQ9s. Second, it appears to have this trail behind it, all right, which at first blush you would think that looks like a propulsion trail. In reality, if you want to play the first slide, we'll show you what that looks like in real time, our first video. So we're looking at that, there it goes. Why don't you play it again and then pause it halfway through, right there. All right, if you might be able to see that trail there behind it. That's actually not a real trail. That is a sensor artifact. Each one of those little blobs is actually a representation of the object as it's moving through. And later in the video, as the camera slews, that trail actually follows the direction of the camera, not the direction of the object. We pulled these apart frame by frame. We were able to demonstrate that that is essentially a readout overlap of the image. It's a shadow image, right? It's not real. Further, if you later follow this all the way to end, it starts to resolve itself into that blob that's in that picture in the top left, right? And if you squint, it looks like an aircraft because it actually turns out to be an aircraft. Go ahead and put that on. So you'll see the tail sort of pop out there. And so what you're looking at is, this is in the infrared, this is the heat signature off of the engines of a commuter aircraft that happened to be flying in the vicinity of where those two MQ-9s were at. Why am I showing you this? So the first one that I showed you, we don't have resolved yet, right? That is an unresolved case we are still studying. This one we can resolve. But this is the kind of data that we have to work with and the type of analysis that we have to do, which can be quite extensive when you have to pull these apart frame by frame. Further, we're now matching all of this with the models of all of those imaging sensors so that I can say, I can recreate this. I can actually show how the sensor is going to respond. All of these sensors don't necessarily respond the way you think they do, especially out in the world and in the field.
Okay, yeah, so that's just an example of one of the cases they analysed. You know, a lot of the UFO fanboys, if they saw that, would probably be jumping up and down. It's ET, they're here. There's conclusive proof that ET is here. Now, you think the military would have learned by now to use sensors other than infrared. I mean, it's a good idea to use infrared, of course, but it's also a very good idea to use actual visual sensors, you know. I mean, if it was a visual sensor, they'd have been able to look at that and say, it's obviously a commuter plane. A lot of things look strange in infrared, but I'm sure that's a lesson they've learned, and they will be changing their methodology accordingly. Okay, this is a clip from the recent Senate Armed Services Emerging Threats and Capabilities Subcommittee presentation that was put out live a couple of days ago about UAPs and what, you know, how their research into UAPs is going. So we'll listen to Dr. Kirkpatrick. He's going to tell us how they analyse the information that they receive.
That time, about 150 were likely balloon-like or something like that. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean they're resolved.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so what? Let me walk everyone through what our analytic process looks like. We have essentially a 5-step process, right? So we get our cases in with all the data. We create a case for that event. My team does a preliminary scrub of all of those cases as they come in, just to sort out, do we have any information that says this is in one of those likely categories? It's likely a balloon, it's likely a bird, it's likely some other object. Or we don't know. Then we prioritize those based off of where they are. Are they attached to a national security area? Does it show some anomalous phenomenology that is of interest? If it's just a spherical thing that's floating around with the wind and it has no payload on it, that's going to be less important than something that has a payload on it, which will be less important than something that's maneuvering, right? So there's sort of a hierarchy of just binning the priorities because we can't do all of them at once. Once we do that and we prioritize them, we take that package of data in that case, and I have set up 2 teams. Think of this as a red team, blue team, or a competitive analysis. I have an intelligence community team made up of intelligence analysts, and I have an S&T team made up of scientists and engineers and the people that actually build a lot of these sensors, or physicists, because if you're a physicist, you can do anything. Right? But they're not associated with the Intel community. They're not Intel officers. So they look at this through the lens of the sensor, of what the data says. We give that package to both teams. The intelligence community is going to look at it through the lens of the intelligence record and what they assess, and their Intel tradecraft, which they have very specific rules and regulations on how they do that. Scientific community, technical community is going to look at it through the lens of what is the data telling me? What is the sensor doing? What would I expect a sensor response to be? And back that out. Those 2 groups give us their answers. We then adjudicate. If they agree, then I am more likely to close that case if they agree on what it is. If they disagree, we will have an adjudication. We'll bring them together. We'll take a look at the differences. We'll adjudicate why do you say one thing and you say another. We will then come to a case recommendation. That'll get written up by my team. That then goes to a senior technical advisory group, which is outside of all of those people, made up of senior technical folks and Intel analysts and operators from retired out of the community. And they essentially peer review what that case recommendation is. They write their recommendations, that comes back to me, I review it, we make a determination, and I'll sign off one way or the other, and then that will go out as the case determination. Once we have an approved web portal to hang the unclassified stuff, we would downgrade and declassify things and put it out there. In the meantime, we're putting a lot of these on our classified web portal.
Okay, so that's how they go about identifying a UAP. They have a lot of people that assess, what they're looking at, what the sensors are telling them. They have 2 different groups that assess the same information, and if they come up with the same conclusion, then he looks at it and he'll make an adjudication. Okay, so it's quite a complex procedure. It's peer-reviewed, complex procedure. And you have to wonder why, don't you, that they go through all this when there are people like, Ben Kremlin-Jones and Steve Bassett around that can just look at something and tell you it's an alien spacecraft. Just look at a fuzzy image and say, that's an ET craft. Well, we've just seen that chap from AARO, the chap that runs AARO, telling us the rigorous examination that any UAP evidence has to go through. all the different departments they pass it to. They pass it to, scientists, engineers, theoretical physicists, intelligence people, to see if they can produce a report that will be peer reviewed, so that they can drop it in a particular bucket. And you've got to wonder why, when they could hire a top-notch investigator like this. See that? Someone as fit and healthy and full of life and vigour as Kremlin Jones, who can look at a fuzzy image and tell you beyond any reasonable doubt that it is extraterrestrial technology. Why would they go to all that bother when they could just hire Jonesy here, who will just look at it and say, yeah, that's definitely extraterrestrial technology. Yeah. Respect my authority. I'm telling you, that is an ET craft. That fuzzy blob, it's not moth. It's a craft from another galaxy. It's a craft from another star system. It's ET. Amazing. Perhaps I should send this to that guy. I've forgotten his name already. But the fellow we've just been looking at, so that he can maybe recruit Jones, get him over there, and get Jonesy to put them on the right path. He'll say, "Are you sure that you're a UFO investigator? You look an awful lot like a bin man." All right. Well, okay. Back to the video. I think this is worth a quick look.
UAP are frequently observed flying in extremely high or very low speeds and come in various sizes and shapes. During the recent shootdowns over North America, DoD disclosed that filters on radar systems were adjusted to allow for detection and tracking of diverse sets of objects for the first time. While opening the aperture can overload the real-time analytic process, we cannot keep turning a blind eye to surveillance data that is critical to detecting and tracking UAP. We need to...
Yeah, okay. So what they mean there by what did she say, changing the aperture or something? What they're actually doing is it's a software thing. So when the radar scans round, it picks up a lot of clutter. They're going to say, well, we're looking for fast-moving military aircraft. We're looking for missiles. So the software will ignore anything that's travelling at the speed of a balloon, something like that, or maybe even commercial aircraft. They might have a notch for commercial aircraft. So what they're doing is they're modifying the software so that it's not going to blank out as much stuff as it does now, because they've sort of honed it right down. They've closed it up because they're not really interested in looking at all this other stuff. It's not that the system doesn't detect it, it's just that the software doesn't show it on the screen. So now they're changing the software so that it does show it on the screen. They're going to have more stuff to look at on the screen, basically, by opening up the aperture, as they call it. But it's a software thing. They've just changed the software. So now, if when the radar detects something that's travelling at 50 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour, it will appear on the screen, whereas before it wouldn't have done. This is why these they went through this sort of phase of detecting these balloons. After the Chinese balloon was discovered, they've said, yeah, okay, we'll open up the aperture a bit in the software. So now they see more balloons. So, and then people lost interest in the balloons, so that sort of balloons came and went. All right, well, I think that'll probably do for today. Of course, there won't be any UFO disclosure anytime soon because there's nothing to disclose. They haven't got any ET materials. There's been no ET crashes. There is no tangible evidence of ET visitation to the planet. And you get the UFO fanboys, saying things like, "Oh, wouldn't it be good if only they would disclose this? All the people in the third world would get free power, and wouldn't it be good if this next American president disclosed this? Walked into the White House and said, "Hey, the biggest thing in human history, we're interacting with ET." And it's all complete and utter nonsense. This is just this. This is just what the UFO fanboys want to see, and especially one of them. He's knocking on now. Before he drops off the perch, he's making up every single, clutching at straws reason there might be for disclosure urgently, because he wants to see it before he drops off the perch. And of course, there's nothing to disclose. It's all complete and utter nonsense. Okay, well, there we go. I think that'll do for this video. Thanks for watching. Maybe I'll catch you again.